The words strategic, tactical, and implementation refer to the so-called hierarchy of decision making. This question is asking you to diagnose which level in that sequence a particular example falls. A bank must decide which branch office to assign the account of a particularly important or high maintenance client. Is it an example of strategic, tactical, or implementation? Okay, first off, what is this hierarchy? Well, I can jot it down here. Strategic decisions are long-term. They set the goals of an organization. Tactical comes next, generally agreed as being medium term, like out to a year type of thing. They find solutions. Implementation requires short-term decision making. All right, putting things into action and adjusting. Oh, now, the problem gives us an example. They're trying to decide which branch office should handle this particularly important client. How are we to diagnose which of these three levels that decision would fall on? One good test, especially in the case of this particular example, is remember a long-term decision. How do you tell if something's a long-term decision? Once it's decided, it is not easily undone. A long-term decision, you are deciding for several years out. That means that once you make the decision and you set the decision in motion, it would be a couple years before you could get rid of that solution or undo that solution, and go back on that solution in any sense. I'm looking at this example. It says they must decide which branch office to assign. The other sort of alert here is the word assign. This is an important decision, certainly. But if they decided on a certain branch office and then they were to change their mind, you wouldn't be stuck with the decision for years. That's indicating that the best level for this fit, or the best fit for which level would be tactical. Okay, it's not gonna, the solution does not last long enough, right, in terms of revising it to call it strategic. It is not short-term enough, though. It is very important. It's not something that you'd want to do daily, or you'd lose that high maintenance client if you were, like, for instance, switching their branch offices daily. And it's also an issue of finding a good solution assignment. That's why I underlined that. Was another hint. That does tend to fall on the tactical level, finding assignments, important assignments. Okay, now notice that the next question, it is the same diagnostic challenge. A bank must decide which particular branch office, oh wait a minute, different decision, should be closed and its current location sold to another bank. Make the call. Is that strategic, tactical, or implementation? This particular decision would be a good example of a strategic decision, because decide carefully on that, because once you do that, that is not easily undone. That is a solution to last several years. Capacity decisions in general, closing down facilities, building new facilities, these tend to be on the strategic level in general. The next scenario here, looks like we're with that same bank, but it's a different decision. A bank has just received an electronic signal that one of its ATMs, its cash machines, is out of service due to a lack of cash to distribute. The bank must decide, all right, there's the decision, here it comes, whether to send a courier to restock the ATM immediately, it's after business hours, or just allow it to remain out of service until the main banking operation opens the following business day. Again, make the call. Is that strategic, tactical, or implementation? All right, notice it's just one ATM machine. Just now we got a signal. We are deciding between a courier or just letting it stay out of cash. which is something that even if we decide either way, by tomorrow it will be a new day and the ATM will have cash either way. The decision doesn't last very, very long at all. Right, this is implementation. These are all signs that, fair enough to call this particular decision as belonging to the implementation level. Extremely short term. Now here, in the next question, okay, we're away from banks, we're just with an organization. An organization must decide whether, now notice this, a particular shipment, not all shipments, a particular shipment will be sent by air freight or by surface trucking. Is it an example? Make the call. Strategic, tactical, or implementation. This particular situation, that would be another good example of implementation. In a certain sense, in terms of scale, it's a small decision. It's a short-term decision because it's one particular shipment. Decide now how to send it. Either way, it's going to be there at least at most in a couple days, right? And we'll be on to our next decision. This is putting things into motion, taking action. This is an example from, again, the implementation level of that hierarchy. Now, our last diagnostic challenge. An organization must decide between Singapore, London, or Buffalo as a location for the construction of a new manufacturing facility. Make the call. Strategic, tactical, or implementation. We are back up to the top of the list. That's an excellent example of a strategic decision. That's a decision deciding on a location. Generally, location planning decisions do tend to belong to the strategic level of decision making because you do need to choose very, very carefully, because once you've chosen, you need to make that option last. It is not easy to undo that option or to back out of it.